welcome to the Clifton Worley Show. This week we have a special guest with us, Brandon Bagby. Hey, Brandon.
Hey, how's it going?
Oh, it's going good. I am so excited to have you on the show and kind of do a little backstory on you to kind of introduce you to our listeners. Brandon, we have a mutual friend, Andy Kim, and he said, guys, you totally should link up and do an interview. And so I appreciate Andy for setting that up and introducing you to me. The first I came in to encounter with you is you were in one of the many Facebook groups that I frequent, and you were doing a live stream one night. I think it was Gear Talk Praise and Worship. I'm not 100% sure.
I think I know what you're talking about. I think
and you were talking about some expectations and realities of being a touring guitarist and kind of speaking to that, and it was kind of a question and answer format, and there's a lot of good stuff there.
Well, yeah, I appreciate that. No, I posted a question to the audience, and it was Gear Talk Praise and Worship, and I said, how many of you guys want to know the reality of what I do? And me being at the level I'm at, you want to know kind of the ins and outs and some truth behind what I do. And for me, I'm an open book, and and I teach a lot at Camp Electric each year, which is TobyMac's Camp Electric during the summer, and we get high school and middle school kids, and they all want to be musicians when they grow up. But I share with them the realities that I wish someone would shared with me before getting into this occupation. So I would have known everything that back. Because when you go to college, you go in. If you're going to the medical field, you kind of know. What's expected of you as a medical physician, what you get paid, typically salary range, because that's public information, on places like Glassdoor.com and just other sites that share salaries and and you have those, the expectations of what, that practice is, but nobody really talks about everything a musician has to do. So that's why I wanted to offer that question and answer situation, just open book, ask away kind of situation.
Yeah. And I really appreciate and admire that you're willing to do that, because I think we're close to the same age. And back when I was coming up, it was, everybody had that dream as well who were musicians, but no idea whatsoever how to get started down that path.
Exactly.
And I love it when guys like you are sharing their stories, because for one thing, it makes it realistic. Like, okay, is this something that a young person thinking, is this something I really do want to pursue? What are some of the challenges that you face, and am I willing to accept those challenges? And do I love this enough to go after it?
Absolutely. That's the big question. Do I love this enough to stay in and go after it, or pursue it? That's the biggest thing.
Oh yeah. And I think a lot of guys, and it's okay to fail,
Oh, absolutely. It's fantastic to fail, because you if you're not failing, you won't ever learn how to win.
Exactly. And I think that kind of brings us to where I want to start. Hit a couple talking points real quick. First of all, we have something in common. We are both kind of from the same region.
Yep.
I grew up here in South Mississippi, about an hour drive from New Orleans. Right over across the North Shore, across the state line. And you're on kind of the if I'm correct, I kind of let you explain kind of where you're from.
Yeah, so like my parents live in the small town of Amite in Amite, Louisiana, which is pretty close to the Mississippi border, and I'd say probably about a 45-minute to an hour drive to New Orleans. So yeah, pretty close to you, I would say. But,
I think I was over in. I went through Folsom last weekend. I think that's pretty close.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
that's about, I'd say 30 minutes from them.
Okay.
So yeah. So they're about 45 minutes coming from Louisiana, or that whole that whole little area.
Yeah.
So,
And
totally.
and so, and I think kind of tell. I don't want to try to tell your story for you, but you were born in New Orleans. You ended
Yeah.
up living in Nashville, growing up at a young age because your
Mhm.
dad was working there, and then
Yep.
sometime around like junior high or high school, you guys moved back down to South Louisiana,
Yeah.
and kind of
Yep.
explain what that's like.
Yeah. So I was born in New Orleans at Tulane Medical Center, and we lived in Breaux Bridge. So I was about 5. That's where Hunter Hayes came from.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
another famous, and I think Allie Landry. If you remember her, she was like on the old Doritos commercials, I believe, or the Pringles or something like that.
Okay.
And she was like, I think she was like Miss Louisiana, I believe. I could be blotching this whole thing up, but I'm pretty sure she was Miss Louisiana. And so we moved up to Nashville. My dad had a job opportunity up there. He is a musician, but he didn't move to Nashville for music. He was always in the corporate world, and so he had a job opportunity up there, and he basically went up there and cleaned up a company. And this is like stuff I didn't learn until like later on, like maybe a couple of years ago. That like we moved up there. He cleaned up a company. As soon as he got done cleaning it up, they let him go, and he was struggling and scrounging. But when you're a kid, you don't see that, because my parents really tried to make our childhood the best that it could be, and we didn't notice all the tough hardships. We
Yeah.
didn't see that stuff as kids, and so we lived in Nashville for a while. And my first, I had a lot of musical influence around me. My dad was a guitar player, like a acoustic player, singer. He would play on Bourbon Street in college with a group of guys and just do like Eagles covers. And but for him, music was just for fun. And then when we were in Nashville, I'm surrounded by music, and I picked up violin in 5th grade. So I really wanted to start working in towards music. I was interested in it, so I liked violin and fiddle, and so I picked that up in 5th grade. And then my dad had an opportunity with the company he eventually got on in Nashville. He's been working with for the last 25 to 30 years, and he's actually been working from home in Louisiana for a company out of Nashville for that time period as a regional sales manager for the company, handling several states. And so we moved back down. They wanted to be closer to family, and so we moved out of Nashville. We went back to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and I attended a instrumental magnet school, which had an orchestra program, so I was able to get back into orchestra. And then my parents had the idea of, hey, let's move out of the city and buy some land and build a house. So they did. We moved out to Amite, and it was an extreme culture shock for me, because it was true Southern living. It was a football town, did not celebrate the arts, and so there was no orchestra. I couldn't excel in music, but it was my 8th grade year, and my orchestra teacher said, "Hey, Brandon, what kind of music do you like to listen to?" At the time, I'm listening to things like Green Day, Bush, Offspring. I'm like, I like rock music. I'm really into rock music. He goes, well, you ought to play what you like to listen to, because you will stay interested in the instrument that you're playing. And so I took that to heart. So I had saved my money, it's been talked about in previous podcasts how I did that, but I saved about a few $100s, and I bought my first electric guitar and amp when I was in 9th grade. And we lived so far out in the country that we didn't have cable television. So when I'd get home every day, I would just woodshed, and we didn't have YouTube. We didn't have resources like they're out today. I was woodshedding to cassette and just listening all by ear. My dad gave me a chord book, and that was really all my training. And then, of course, my parents got me a subscription to Guitar One magazine. Do you remember those? And Guitar Player magazine. They would have tablature, and so I would learn how to read tablature next. So yeah, it was kind of like the start of me getting into electric was to do, and it pushed me to just excel at an instrument.
Yeah, I could totally relate to that.
Yeah.
I got my first acoustic around 12 or 13. I was tinkering around on bass a little bit before that, and then I think I was around ninth grade when I got my first electric. And
Wow.
you know what I would do every day? I would come home from school. I was in band playing trumpet, and I didn't really enjoy that because it wasn't playing the kind of music I like to play. And I would put on a CD and tune to that every day. Like, I think for the longest time it was like Delirious Live and In the Can, and that first song was in D, and I knew that I could tune up to that and it'd be, reliable. I didn't even own a tuner, and awesome. I would do that, and so I cut my teeth on that. So kind of can relate on that a lot of levels. Grew up in a football town, and
yep. Yeah.
So I totally know what you're talking about.
Yeah, totally. And I think a lot of the listeners, some people probably live in small towns that are going to be listening to this podcast, and I think they can relate to that as well, as far as background.
Yeah. Well, there's something in your story you mentioned, and when you mentioned the guy, I knew exactly who this was. I remember getting the album, but Jason Morant, right?
Oh yeah. That's right. Yeah, that's an interesting situation. So, I didn't grow up in a Christian home, and I grew up in a Catholic home, but not a practicing Catholic home, and so my parents didn't, influence or teach us about relationship with Jesus and things like that. And so this kid I met at school, I was probably in 11th grade. He was in 10th grade. His dad was like a pastor at this non-denominational church in town. And he planted a seed in my life. He spent a whole year inviting me to church. And he gave me this burnt CD. And the CD didn't even have, a label on it. And he told me it was a group called Adam's Lament, which was actually Jason's first band. And I didn't know who Jason was. And so, I spent a whole year listening to that album, or that is a live worship recording.
Yeah.
And it's kind of odd for a non-believer listening to a live worship recording for about a whole year. And so the year I was graduating, the night I was graduating, I went to this benefit concert. And it was for a band guy who had gotten cancer, and a bunch of bands got together and came in Louisiana to do a big fundraiser night. All the ticket money went to help treatments. And so, last band I got up, this guy started singing, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's the voice I've been listening to for the last year." And I'm like, "Oh man, this is him. This has got to be him." And so it was just incredible. And so I didn't meet him that night. And then it was later on, probably a couple of years later, I'm in college, probably around age 21, and I go and watch them. I knew they were playing at some church, and then it was a three-piece. It was his brother on drums, him, and then a bass player, but he had no electric guitar player. He used to have Greg Hill from Mute Math, who used to be originally with Mute Math.
Yeah.
And so he had Greg Hill, and then eventually he got Dave Rumsey to jump in. Dave Rumsey was from the band Earthsuit.
Yeah, I remember them.
Yeah, and so I just asked him during that time period. I was like, "Hey, if you don't have a guitar player, I'd love an opportunity to audition." At this time, I'd been spending maybe a year or two playing in my first band, basically, which was the Southeastern Louisiana University Baptist Collegiate Ministries. We'd have a Thursday night together worship night. And honestly, that's where I cut my teeth playing with a band, was with a worship band.
Yeah.
Like I said, I lived in a small town. I didn't have any other musicians to jam with. And then all of a sudden I'm doing Christian music, and I'm having to learn how to do this whole, what does Christian music sound like? Mm-hmm. There was no direction then. It was like just CCM radio stuff. And so that's kind of how I got started. I just asked him. I emailed him. So I will say this part of my story is that I'm very proactive at seeing if a door will open, if God's going to open a door. And so I think it's important for us to be proactive. I know some guys believe that you just sit and wait, but I don't think God calls us just to sit and wait all the time. I think there are opportunities where we do need to be proactive and then sit and wait and see if it's a door that needs to be opened or not.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Going back to that story, so you email him, and what happens?
He responded. He's flattered, and he would love to audition me. So I go down to New Orleans and audition, and at the same time, I find out Dave Rumsey is also, part of the deal, and so they end up going with Dave because he's got more experience. But they really liked what I brought to the table, and so and then there came a time about probably a year after that where Dave needed to kind of start moving on, and he was getting settled more into a day job. And so Jason approached me. We had coffee again, and he remembered me from the audition. He enjoyed what I did, and so he just gave me, the new album that had just released under Integrity Music, and he said, "Learn this," And so basically, I was learning, Dave's parts and just the approach to that style. That's how I got started. And then my first gig, it's so funny. They were like saying, "Yeah, it's gonna be a big stage. We're flying out to Arizona. It's for this event called Acquire the Fire." And keep in mind, I have no idea what Acquire the Fire is. I didn't grow up Christian home. I go into youth conferences or things like that. I show up. I'm playing. My first gig with them was like an arena with 10,000 kids, and I'm like, oh. I was definitely not in the headspace I needed to be. And when I listen back, like I've heard recordings, and like I definitely was not the quality of player that needed to be on that stage. But what I tell people, and what I did realize in that time, I wasn't the best player for that gig, and I wasn't, I was still fresh and green, but I know that God makes no mistake where he places you. And so I looked at that as that God wanted that to happen for me to learn something from it. And I learned a lot from doing that, the Acquire the Fire event, playing in front of thousands of people, and then, learning the difference between worship and then also entertainment, and the fine line you have to kind of run. Because on my current gig, it's a pretty big blend of worship and entertainment. There's a lot of entertainment in our show that I work with Mandisa now, and it's a dance fest. It's fun.
Yeah. It looks like a lot of fun. I was watching some of that this morning.
Oh yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
So that's one takeaway. If someone's taking notes from this podcast, is that God makes no mistake where you are. So
absolutely.
If you're serving at your local church, and people are getting saved, and people are coming in, and people are getting fed, that's where you need to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think something that I see a lot of is young guys. They get these dreams, and they're absolutely dreams. If it's something that is placed in their heart, they should run after. But at the same time, I see people, especially younger people, getting frustrated. Because of where they are, and they don't see how can I ever go from A to B.
Here, because there's no job application you can fill out for what I do.
Right.
There's no real training. Like there's no guide, and so for me, I went, it was during college when I started working with Jason, and then after college, like Katrina hit, Jason moved up to Nashville, and I stayed and finished my last semester of college. And after that, I had aspirations to move to Nashville, and not necessarily play Christian music. Just to play music in general. I love playing music. Then, my parents were like, you really and get a good job. Well, that's what I did. I started, working into corporate America for a few years, and got pretty high up, and I was getting to a point in my career where it was the no turning back situation, where it's like, I know if I keep going forward on this next opportunity that just got laid in front of me, that I will probably not ever play music for a living or try to do it. Because I'll get comfortable with what I'm doing. Once you reach that limit in corporate America, when you start going towards the VP role, it's hard to turn back.
Yeah, you got to be all in for that.
Right.
Right. And I totally get that.
Yeah. And my heart wasn't all in for it. My heart still longed to go to Nashville and just give it a try. And I felt that was God tugging on my heart through those years, even then, because I was playing in bars and I was playing on churches on the weekend, and I just wasn't feeling completely fulfilled. Mm-hmm. And I loved, my job was great, but I wasn't fulfilled in my job. I wasn't fulfilled in what I was doing for a living or a career at that time. I was wild at heart. I was straight up John Eldred, wild at heart. And so, man, when I left my job, that was back in 2009, the economy was tanking, and our company was laying off people. And I went to the leadership team and I said, hey, look, I got this thing it's been in my heart for years to do, and I feel like I need to do it now or it's going to be too late. Mm-hmm. And I said, can you put me on the layoff list? I know this sounds really weird, but go ahead, lay me off. And I said, yeah, we absolutely will. We support you to move, to Nashville and try. We love that. And we'll give you a severance package, and we'll, allow you to collect unemployment. We'll do whatever it takes to help support you, while you're trying to make this happen. And that's what I did. I threw everything in storage, and then moved to Nashville with a twin-size air mattress and clothing and guitars and amps and pedal board. That was it. And, back in the day, Facebook wasn't as big of a connector, so I went on Craigslist and just found some guys to move in with. I just took a chance, complete chance. I had one friend that lived in Nashville, and it was from that Jason Morant gig. And I'll say this, he's never gotten me a gig, so don't think like it's always who you know, because it's not. We had a friendship, and so his name's Matt Gilder, and he's the music director for Chris Tomlin, and he was music director for Chris Tomlin when I moved up to Nashville. And we just caught up. I just told him I want to do it. And he's like, yeah, just come crash at my place for a few days, see how you like it. And so I did. I went up there, crashed, and then I met my new roommate and just went back down to Louisiana. And 2 weeks later, I'm moving all my stuff up.
Yeah, that's amazing. And, oh my goodness, I see so many parallels. I think because of growing up in that same time frame and what's going on in America. I can relate on the feeling compelled to go and get that university degree because that's what society, pushes you towards.
Absolutely.
And I'm proud I did it. But I remember at the time, like, quitting bands I was in to feel like, well, I'm not taking school very seriously. I need to take school serious. Right. And, there was a little bit of that inner conflict, and even, like playing worship in my, college Baptist Student Union,
Yeah. Wow. So you did the Baptist Student Union thing
I
too.
did at junior college, yes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Wow, we have a lot of parallels.
Yeah, I just, when you were telling your story, I'm like, man, that's a lot of the same background. But, so I totally get that. And then stepping out, I graduate college in, I think it was December of 2007.
Yeah.
And I think I couldn't have picked a worse time to graduate.
Man.
Jobs could not be found.
Tough. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I graduated December of 2005, so just a couple years before you.
Yeah.
And it was still difficult. What's funny is I got my degree in graphic design and a minor in business, and I never had a graphic design job. Never got hired as a graphic designer. I would do freelance stuff. I moved more into sales and management. I had some great mentors that were I have, a lot of great business mentors in my family that have owned companies, and then I've got mentors that are just friends that are in business. And so I just kind of went into that path, even though I had a degree in a different area.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, and the same with me. Like, I had a business degree with a minor in information systems.
yeah,
Not using information systems at all. I mean, I'm in the ministry,
right.
but I started out as a manager trainee for Waffle House straight out of college because that's the only
Wow.
job I could find, and I sloughed through that for a year before I just could not do it anymore, and I ended up being a salesman for Pepsi for a little while, and I enjoyed that, the marketing and the sales thing,
Cool.
and it taught me so much.
Yeah,
But it was like you, the music, the desire to create just never would die.
right.
And I knew that I could never drink the Kool-Aid where I was at to climb
Yep.
the
Yeah.
ladder because I didn't believe in it. But
Yeah.
and so, very interesting story. Me and my wife, I had just got married, and first time I had some days off, we drove up. I was living in Jackson, Mississippi at the time,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I drove up to Nashville for 3 days,
Right.
and we went to the Bluebird.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, back when you
I've
could get
played.
into it.
Yeah, I've played there a couple times with
Yeah,
some artists.
that's a really unique place, and that built a fire in me to kind of rethink what I was doing in life.
Mm.
And it just so happened because of some steps that I was able to go back and work at the church I grew up in
Wow, that's
and
awesome.
lead worship, opportunity to do that. And so there's something about, and maybe some of our listeners would understand this, but like if you have a desire deep down to create or you're musical, that's something you don't need to kill or let die in
Right.
your life.
Right.
Even if just finding that avenue,
Yeah.
an outlet to do it in. It may not be a
Yeah.
full-time role, but e- ev- don't let that part of you die, because you'll get into your career and you may feel very empty when you get there.
That's right. That's very true. I think even when I'm done touring, I'll still play music in some shape or form.
Yeah.
Whether it's just for fun or it's never gonna go away. It'll always be a part of my life. So
So I wanted to ask you, and I'm listening to your story on some other
mhm.
podcasts,
Yeah,
and you make the leap. You move up to Nashville. You move in with some guys off Craigslist. Not
yeah,
too long after that, you propose to your wife. Y'all elope.
yeah.
She moves up there for 30 days. And I'm just going in fast
Right.
forward
Yeah,
here.
yeah. Right.
You,
Yeah,
you stay there for 30 days, and then you go find your own place. Your wife
yeah.
is working as a nanny.
Right.
A few months, I think you said like 8 or 9 months into it, she tells you she's pregnant, and you
Yeah.
kind of hit a crisis.
Yeah, because she got laid off that day. She came home and said, I just got laid off. And I was like, oh, man. And what's so funny is we're sitting in our living room. We just bought new couches finally. And we spent $2,000 on these things. And we're like, yeah, we need some couches. The only thing we needed was some couches. And we had some Craigslist $50 couches for a while. And it's like, finally, things were looking good. And then she's like, I got laid off. And I remember sitting on the living room floor because we had sold our couches to a friend, our Craigslist couches to another friend. And we were waiting for our couches to be delivered. And then she goes, and I think I'm pregnant. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And it wasn't the reaction that you should give your wife. It
No.
wasn't fair. It wasn't like, I'm so excited, honey. It was more like, I was just completely overwhelmed because I've never had to deal with, a pregnant wife or pregnancy or, like, we're married, it's fine. It's like I figured we'd do the 5-year plan. 8 months, down the road, God saw differently. So that was truly an act of God because we were on birth control. So So yeah, definitely miracle. Miracle. Like all of our children, people are always like, because we have 4 kids now, and people are like, "Oh, did you plan that?" I'm like, "No, it's just God saw the timing." And I've kind of fallen into that as a father, to where it's like, my Father in heaven knows best,
Mm-hmm.
and if He wants to bless us with a child and trust us with His child, then so be it. That's an honor.
Yeah.
And so, people ask if we're done. We don't know. I think we're going to take a little break for a while because the kids are kind of close in age. But yeah, like I've got a different view on children now, after having our first, and you know, just my wife's influence. My wife comes from a family of 8. I came from 2. So
Mm-hmm.
I have a sister. And so it's definitely different having a larger family,
Oh yeah.
but I love it.
Well, I'm listening here, and me and my wife, we have 4, so I know exactly what you mean, and
Yep.
it's a calling in of itself.
Right.
But I wouldn't trade it for anything. Now that I'm here, and I'll tell you one thing that, and I'm sure you would agree,
Yeah.
that you're never ready for it. It's something you
Nope.
grow into.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, people always talk about, I remember people saying, when I had friends getting married, like right after college or something, like, I'm saving for marriage, and I'm saving money to buy this house, and I'm saving money for when we have kids. And what I have learned is, like, you can save as much money as you want, but you're never going to be completely ready.
Yeah,
So, you
absolutely.
know,
So,
so,
so at this point, you're scrounging. It's kind of throwing you into a little bit of
oh,
crisis. What's
ah,
going on?
well, so she's losing her job, and then I'm still on unemployment. And by the way, I'm at home, like, while she's doing. I'm filling out, because it's the job crisis situation, like you and I were talking about, 2009. I was literally filling out 10 job applications a day,
Mm-hmm.
and nothing like was coming through. I even had some suit and tie interviews in downtown Nashville. Do I want to go back to this corporate life? God just kept shutting all those doors, and I end up scoring a job at a place that I'm thankful I went to, in a sense, because I got to see how jacked up the system is.
Mm-hmm.
I ended up getting a job at Guitar Center for about 2 months,
Mm-hmm.
and I got to see how poor the infrastructure was set up there as a retail operation. Coming from a retail background, then moving to corporate, so I've been in both worlds, and I see how things are handled. And so, man, it was definitely trying. Like, I was literally making $1,000 a month,
Yeah.
and our bills were like 2,000 a month at the time. And it's just like, how am I going to pay for all? Like, how am I going to support my family? But what's funny is, like, God would provide different opportunities that would just come through. At that time, I was working with a friend in a children's book company, and I was getting paid to do that, and I was an equity partner, which we'll touch into a little bit later when we talk about staying, how some of the things we'll talk about later about staying busy, and
Mm-hmm.
how do you not crash. And so God would always just pull through and provide. And it took me an entire year to learn that I'm not the provider, but God is. And when God provides the opportunities, it's our job to work as hard as we can at those opportunities.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's the main thing, is learning to recognize opportunities
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
and pursuing them. I know that, especially creatives, who are outside of that 9 to 5
Right.
deal, learning to deal with the ebb and flow of what you think is success.
Yeah. 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 It's hard. It's definitely hard. And I will say this at the same time, like, I spent 2 months there, and I ended up going to work at an art store, which I actually regularly shopped at for $8 an hour. So now I was making 1,200 a month. So I got to step up, from Guitar Center, and I did that for, I'm going to say, about 5 months or so,
Mm-hmm.
and then at that same time, I was painting. I actually had an art career before a music career, so I was already being shown in a gallery in town, and I was selling, $2,000 paintings on Facebook. It was fantastic. Wow. So that's another, provision God was allowing to happen. Like, I was painting and people were interested in buying. And so that's another way I was able to support my family, and God just opened those opportunities just to happen. And so it was probably around the 5-month mark, and some other opportunities started showing itself. And I sat down with my wife and I said, what am I doing? I said, I moved to Nashville with a goal, and I feel like I'm not getting closer to that goal. And I think it's time for me to jump ship at this job, because, I have a family of entrepreneurs. And so I look at, the importance of the time you're trading in for the dollar. Mm-hmm. And that's how I look at things. And so I'm kind of jacked up in a sense to where that's why I probably can't work a normal job, because I think about how much time I'm trading in for X amount of dollars per week. And so some opportunities came up, and I said, I think it's time to stop trading my time in. I'm making only $300, a week. I think I can make more. And so that turned into this like a wine and easel, sips and stroke towel business that needed, some paintings and stuff like that to franchise out. And they were going to pay me, $50 a painting. And I worked it out to where I made a system to where I was making $250 to $300 a day.
Wow.
So I went from making $300 a week
yeah.
to $250 to $300 a day. And I did that for about 3 weeks, just busted out a bunch of paintings for this place. And then, I found other opportunities in that business to make more money, such as putting the photos on the website, the paintings, and creating a stencil situation to help, for preparing classes. Then you get paid to teach classes. And I did that for like maybe a month, 2 months. And I would go in, work a little bit and do that. But at the same time, as soon as people found out that I left my job, doors started opening for sessions and for playing in town and gigs, and all at the same time while my wife was pregnant. And when we found out we were pregnant, if somebody's writing this down, I say this all the time: whatever field that you're going into, you need to find a mentor. And I had a guy that just randomly, it just happened. We were working on this benefit together for a concert for Haiti, and he was probably a B-list session guitar player in town, and he took me under his wing. He just asked me what I want to do, and I told him, and he's like, well, just come over to my studio. So for me, I hope to be able to do that and return the favor to someone in the future.
Yeah.
But yeah, I had a mentor, and he was the band leader for a group called Shadazy that was pretty big in the late 90s and early 2000s on Big Machine Records. And so he invited me to play some private CMA events and private concerts with them. And he coached me through reading Nashville number chart. He coached me on how to approach a recording session, what to play first, what's expected. So I had a mentor that mentored me. He didn't charge me anything. It was just goodness out of just the goodness out of his heart that he poured into me. And since then he's gotten out of the business, and his wife is doing well. She's a VP at CMT, and he's actually in the IT world now. He got into software development.
Okay.
So he moved on out of the session world while he was in his mid to late 40s. So, but yeah, I just say this, like, whatever you want to go into vocationally, if you want to be a lawyer, a doctor, or a mechanic, you need to find a mentor.
Yeah.
That can mentor you.
Well, listening to your story, that seems to be the big game changer in your life. Now, there was some things happening before that were leading up to it.
Oh,
but
yeah.
That seemed to be the game changer of stepping into touring and doing sessions and doing, finding it where that's kind of your full-time career.
Yeah, it what I do. There's no application to fill out, and in my world, I think the doors really started opening when I had a mentor that was helping mentor me on how to negotiate a gig, because it was different than the business world. I mean, it's similar, but it's different. But like what to do when you show up to a session, how not to look like the new guy, how to, hold on, you know. So yeah, totally.
Well, I want to ask something. Something in your story that you were talking about was when you went out on the road and you had a small child at the time,
Yeah,
and you had been out for a really long time, and
yeah.
you started catching some friction there at home.
Oh yeah, yeah. So man, I remember the first long tour we did. It was like I think it was about 3.5 months, and it was with an artist, a young unsigned, well, independently, independent artist. His It was a dad funded project, and that's actually pretty often that those things do happen. But this was one of those situations where we were just going at it, and this artist needed to kick his career off, and so we did a 3.5 month tour, and I saw my family 2 days for 2 days in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And I missed my first daughter. Her name's Isley. She's 7 now, and I missed her first steps. I saw her first steps over Skype or
Mm-hmm.
FaceTime or one of those applications. And it was rough. Even my wife and I were having a tough time because it was my first time being on a long tour, and my wife and I had always dated long distance, so our communication was strong. But because I was hanging out with people all day, and I was tired by the end of the day to call her, and almost out of words of what to say, and our communication just started lacking
Yeah.
heavily.
Yeah.
And it was really tough. And so I had to learn that it is important to proactively call your spouse while you're busy on the road. I mean, you can get lost in this world and be on the road and never call home. And I've been guilty even now of maybe a day that I didn't call home because I was so busy. But I have to remind myself to constantly do that and check in, especially now because she's home alone, with 4 kids, and we've got some great helpful neighbors and some friends and stuff. We don't have any family nearby, which can be difficult.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you have to be proactive with your spouse when you're doing this kind of a job.
Yeah, I know that's something I think everybody will face. Who's chasing after that dream at some point.
Yeah.
What would you say are the things you can do to refuel that fire, and
Yeah.
and two, like how to avoid those pitfalls?
Yeah. I make it a point to call my wife every morning. It's important to check to make sure she's alive, and we've talked about this, and she's gotten on to me. It's good when you have a wife that can get on to you, so it's okay. But she brought up a point. She said, what if you don't call me till 2 or 3 in the afternoon, and what if something happened to me and the kids are here panicking and don't know what to do?
Yeah.
I started thinking, I'm like, gosh, man, I am so selfish for not calling and checking on them like that. And so now I've made it a point every morning to call and see how things are going, make sure things are fine, and then, we text throughout the day. And then I'll usually call in the evening sometime or during the day if I'm not doing too much. If it's an off day, I'll talk to her more often. So, but yeah, for me, in the morning is to make that call. So that's being proactive. So it's important to do that and FaceTime as much as possible with my kids. Because I've got an almost 1-year-old. He'll be 1 in a couple of days, and I'm gonna miss his birthday. That's another thing, guys. Is that you're gonna miss birthdays and important events.
Yeah.
Because of this job that you're in. If you want to be a touring musician.
Well, let's talk a minute. Going back to that live stream.
Yeah.
What are some of the real life expectations? And I had saw there was a thread going on weeks after that, where a guy was talking about he was getting his first job to go support a worship artist. He was a young guy, and he was asking, "What are some of the practical things on the road I should be prepared for?" So do you have a quick rundown of some things that you would suggest?
Yeah, and I love that post because
it was funny. It
was comical because some of the guys that were answering probably have never spent a long duration on a road in a professional manner. You know, they might have done a weekend warrior situation, disciple now thing. But I mean, for me, like, for one thing, when you get in this business, you need to look at your instruments and your pedals and your gear as tools. Mm-hmm. And I learned quickly to stop being emotionally attached to guitars or gear and things like that. And that can happen. I was emotionally attached before I got in this business to my gear and to my guitars and to but man, when you've sold enough guitars and gear to pay your rent and support your family during the really rough times, mm-hmm. you stop caring about the gear in an emotional sense. And then you start looking at it as stuff, which as believers, we need to be looking at it as just stuff anyways, because we can't take it with us. It's all temporary. So, you know, I have some great guitars that I use now from different companies, and they all play great and they all have a purpose. And so start looking at your guitars as your tools and purposeful, not because it just looks cool, but it has to fill the role that you're looking to do. Like, you know, a humbucker guitar, single coil guitars, or something with filtertrons if you're trying to create a certain sound.
Right.
Or, you know, and you're trying to replicate a record that you're trying to learn for that artist. So it's important to have the right tools. So that's first. Have the right tools. Second of all, I cannot stress this enough. Get some insurance on your tools. MusicProInsurance.com. It's fantastic. They're ran through Hanover Insurance Company. It's a massive insurance company. And I know more about them because I've had to file a claim through them, and they do pull through. Because know this, your renter's insurance and your homeowner's insurance will not cover your instruments if they're damaged on the road or on the home if you've ever claimed it as a business expense, or you've claimed that you use it for work. Even if you're a musician at church and you're getting paid an honorarium and you have to claim it on your taxes, well, technically, you're considered a hired musician. That's part of your taxes. So now, those instruments that you use are not going to be covered under your renter's insurance or your homeowner's insurance. So definitely get, musicproinsurance.com has a great program. It's inexpensive, and I think it's $100 per 10 grand in coverage a year. It's definitely worth it, and especially because I've seen so many friends' buses and trailers catch on fire over the years and just lose everything. So second of all, get insurance on your gear, because you need to have your tools for your job. Okay. Third, cases are important. You don't have to have all the nice custom cases. You can have, as long as the cases fit whatever you're putting it in, it's gonna be great. I've got used cases right now on this tour. I'm using a double head case that doesn't belong to me. It belongs to our tour manager, and he's just, and I have a guitar vault that belongs to him as well, but it works. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to be the nicest thing as long as it works and gets the job done. Another thing I would say is number 4, when you get called in for an audition, or you get called to, you're doing your job on stage, you need to really learn the record and know what the artist's expectations are. Like, expectations for my current job with Mandisa, it's learn the record, but add your own flavor into it. So she wants you to be creative, and that's rare. It's rare for an artist to allow you to delineate from the album recording. So you need to figure that out first. You need to find out what the artist or the music director is expecting of you. So definitely learn the record top to bottom, or whatever the songs are, be able to play them in your sleep. And then if the music director says, hey, let's make changes, or hey, why don't you add your own creative elements, be ready to do that as well.
Mm-hmm. Cool stuff. I couldn't help but think, I've promoted some shows here on a local level, and seeing what you said about the gear being tools. We had like Building 429 come through one.
And, they've had all their gear stolen before.
Oh yeah, I've seen them post about it, and the massive amount of gear that they haul in, you could tell with them that it was tools. And there's a kind of a funny story where I was working backstage, and they were bringing out, I think Jason Roy's his name, the front man.
Yeah, the front guy, Jason Roy.
And they were supposed to wheel out. He had like a keyboard to do for one song. It was on wheels, and me and the guy who were wheeling it out, like the thing fell off the stand, and something in the circuit board probably like broke. I don't know, no. and like it was dead on DOA right there in the middle of the concert.
Right. My God!
And for him to be so cool about it, and it was just a tool, and they moved on from it. The guitar player started playing some pads. And he kind of just changed direction, and came out of it, and nobody knew that there was anything wrong. And yet, like, I really respected that, because for me, like, as a worship leader, if something like that would happen on a Sunday morning, that would be hard to bounce back from.
Absolutely.
But he completely handled it like a pro,
That's another situation that does come up very often in these live performances, is that something could go wrong. And I learned that early on. I can thank Matt Gilder. It was on the Jason Morant gig. He taught me an important lesson. So we're playing probably the third or fourth show, and my cable stops working, or something goes wrong with my pedal board. And so I'm like on stage, I'm yelling at the sound guy, like, cable, I need a cable, and then I'm looking down at my pedal board, and this is why the music's happening. It's going on and stuff. And so after that set, Matt pulled me aside. He said, "Hey, what happened?" I said, "I don't know." I said, "My cable stopped working, or something went wrong in my pedal board. I don't know." He goes, "Let me teach you an important lesson. When something like that happens during a set, you fake it until you know what the problem is. So you fake play your guitar, because he said, think about everyone that's worshiping in the audience or watching the show. Where's all the attention going to be focused now? They're going to be looking at you because you're having problems."
Yeah.
And he said, when things go wrong, you need to fake it till you make it. And that was an important, and I've had things like that happen. I had it happen the other night where one of the dancers pulled my wireless, one of my cables out of my wireless on my board, because I run a SGI with a 75-foot, XLR cable to my wireless unit, and she unplugged the 1/4-inch jack just by, she was moving around my pedal board when she was dancing, and so I'm on the other side of the stage, and I'm like, all of a sudden I have no guitar. Well, you know what? I still freaking faked all those riffs, and I acted like nothing was wrong. And as soon as I got back over there, I was able to kind of see what happened, and luckily I saw where it was pulled out. I just popped it back in, and we were good to go.
Yeah.
But you need on those, when you're playing those big arena situations, or even in church, like, especially when people are in corporate worship, you don't want to distract them from being in worship with God, or distract them from the concert.
I couldn't agree more. And I know, like, even in a church context, like, something like that happens, and I've learned, because if you break a string, having some kind of problems, if you would just push past that and act like it's not a problem, like, sometimes there's something really rewarding, like, fixing to happen, where you tangibly can see people, entering in a moment, or something happens in that service, and it just, to all lose it because of freaking out over something minor is not worth it.
It's not at all. So definitely, that's a very important lesson that's that musicians need to learn about. Another thing that I learned in growing up around worship music and growing up in music is, like, discernment, when to play and when not to play.
Yeah.
I think that just has to come with time. There's times where you're playing the first intro section and the chorus, it goes, or the first intro section, and then you might lay out on the first verse. and let some other instrumentation carry it. So discernment, when to play, when not to play, not to step on each other's parts.
Yeah, yeah.
So
That's good.
It's huge stuff. So because that's why you see I've walked in. That's why I started Worship Team Builder. It's an organization I have called worshipteambuilder.com. And it's basically, I take a team into churches and we coach them. And I've walked into situations where the musicians are just so busy and they're stepping on each other's part where it just sounds like a train wreck.
Yeah.
And so that's part of learning discernment and what to play and what works best for the team, not what works best for you.
Exactly. Yeah, I was fixing to ask you about Worship Team Builder.
Yeah.
Kind of about what you do and
Sure.
Yeah, talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, for a second, like basically it's a ministry initiative I wanted to start, and because I started seeing the opportunities of helping churches in that fashion of like, maybe they're not on click tracks yet, maybe they're not using tracks yet for their services, or maybe the musicianship quality isn't where it needs to be to sound close to what you're replicating from Hillsong or Elevation or any of those folks. And man, I really wanted to, it really started when I'd been in Nashville for about 3 or 4 years, and I went home, and this church I used to play at in Baton Rouge, this guy asked, "Hey, you're going to be in town. Why don't you bring some gear down and come play? We'll pay you, we'll pay you even more because, I know you probably make more money now as a musician." It was a couple $100, and which is great. And, for playing 5 songs, it's great for a church situation. And so I'm like, okay, I'll come and do it, and I did it. And man, I was like, after playing there, I was like, man, this is the gig I used to have. And I used to play here every Sunday. And I just didn't notice how much of a train wreck it was until I was away from it and out of it. And I was like, this wasn't even worth the money. Like, I hated my life playing on stage for those 5 songs. I couldn't even enjoy worship. It was such a train wreck. And so it was after that moment, I thought to myself, I want to help fix this. This situation. I said, I know I've been spoiled with some fantastic musicians in Nashville, but there are fantastic musicians everywhere. And I want to help fix this thing that's going on, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a whole nother world in itself, is the worship thing and what goes on in a local church.
Right.
I know one of the things when I was starting out as a worship leader, and I craved, and it was very hard to find other guys who were doing exactly what you were trying to do,
right,
and a network of it. And then over time, like, I started finding, okay, there's these Facebook groups where, man, there's like thousands of people out there doing the exact same thing.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate, guys like you who are doing what you're doing, because there is a need for that.
Yeah.
And I would have loved in my 20s to have had a little bit of coaching in that regard.
Yeah. And I mean, even for the generation now, it's become so track heavy that you don't have to be a great instrumentalist to be on stage playing worship. And I want to change that as well, because you know what? Tracks are going to go away. I mean, the cycle of music and style changes every decade. And so eventually I feel tracks will go away. It might go back to roots style worship or vineyard style, or it might go back to, it's kind of in the 80s format right now. But what if it changes and goes somewhere we don't even think about if the tracks go away? Well, then what are you doing as a musician? So, I want musicians to grow in their craft as an instrumentalist and not just rely so heavy on the tracks, or, oh, this guitar player couldn't learn the part. That's okay. It's in the track. We'll just bump it up in the track and you can just play rhythm.
Yeah.
No, let's get away from that. Let's challenge ourselves as musicians and really and do the best that we can. Because I firmly believe that we should always bring God our best. He's not looking for the cross-eyed lamb for the sacrifice, like you read in some of the Old Testament stuff, where he was mad at the people for bringing like their flock or their lambs or their sacrifices that had issues, or
Yeah.
they might have been lame or cross-eyed or just not good for their farm. So like, oh, we'll just bring this one. It'll be fine. And God did not like that at all. He always wants you to bring the best.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah. That's a good point. And okay, so I want to ask something because
yeah.
this the very kind of where we stopped off from you talking about getting some mentorship and things kind of
Mm-hmm.
taking off and getting on the road to where
Yeah.
you are now. There's something that I admire that you've been able to do is to
Mm-hmm.
be able to sustain your lifestyle, support your family,
Mm-hmm.
doing what you love. Kind of walk me through, catch me up to speed to now, and kind of what do you do to make sure that happens?
Yeah. So for me, I have a family to support. I hate my wife hates when I use the word overhead because I do think in business terms. So I have to think of myself. I need to make this much to be able to support my family and then set back money. So for me, what worked, to be honest, like in my level, I'm in the top tier as far as pay scale with Christian artists.
Mm-hmm.
I'm at the ceiling as far as what I make doing that. Now on this tour, and this is me. If someone's writing this down, always be humble to do whatever it takes to serve, and just even if that means serving your family. So on this tour, we're doing all arenas, and we're out west mostly. And I usually bring a recording rig with me to record on people's tracks and stuff. And I make extra money doing that. Well, because I can't really do that out here on this leg of the tour, I picked up the backline tech role for Mandisa, and so now I'm what they call double dipping. I'm
Mm-hmm.
making a day rate as the backline tech, what a backline tech would make, plus my show pay.
Okay.
So that's one way, and so yeah, it's not too bad. I work maybe a couple hours in the morning, doing setting up two risers, a keys riser and a drum riser, and then setting up my gear. Usually on other tours, I've had my own backline tech, my own guitar tech, but I went ahead. They couldn't find a guy this tour, and I said, "Man, I'll step up. I mean, if the opportunity's there, I'll do it." And they're like,
Mm-hmm.
"Are you sure?" And Mandisa was like, "You really want to do that?" I'm like, I've got a family to support, and I'm not afraid to work hard, and I'm not afraid, to do that. So I just wear gloves. I wear some really nice gloves, and I keep them on majority of the time because my hands, I always joke with the crew guys, well, I'm doing my day job today, and and then my night job, with Disa, and then of course I help tear down. So literally, I spend maybe 4 hours of actual work time doing the backline tech role for a great fee.
Yeah.
And then I play my 30-minute set on this tour with Disa and make a good amount of money as well too. So God, providing those opportunities to help support my family and set some money back. I will say this to any guy that wants to do music for a living: make sure you're doing other things, because in today's market, if a musician looks successful, and they come off as like it's all because they'll say, "Oh, I just do music." Well, there's some things to that. It's either their wife is a breadwinner and they have a great job and they bring in a lot of the income to support the family, or two, they've got money coming in from family. There's a guy that moved to town. I won't say his name, but like he moved to town and he started taking a lot of work from me, and I was like, man, he's got tons of vintage guitars. And I'm thinking, like, I know the artist he used to play with. There's no way he can afford all that gear because these are $4,000 to $5,000 guitars. He's got like 50 of them. I'm like, how in the world did he get to that level? And then I figured out it was a family money situation.
Yeah.
So don't let social media fool you and make you think success is from that social media, because everyone in this job has their own crap to deal with.
Yeah.
And have their own dark spots or their struggles or even financial struggles. So don't think that the grass is greener on the other side. Okay.
Yeah.
And social media has painted that picture that the grass is greener on the other side. So quit comparing yourself to social media. I had to stop doing that with this particular player. He's a good player. He's a great player, and it was me being honestly jealous, because of his situation. But you know what? That's the cards that God dealt to him, and God dealt me a certain set of cards. And so that's why I say, and I have to constantly remind myself and remind other people that God has you where He wants you to be.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you something. In your experience and looking back, because always hindsight is 2020. Yeah. But it is interesting the things we go through. Where I heard you talk about on one of the other podcasts about going through a period of time where it's like there's radio silence. You don't know what that you're making any traction moving forward, pursuing those dreams.
Yeah.
What do you say to the guy who finds himself there?
Well, if you've got radio silence, like in 2013, I kind of stopped. I started moving away from a certain pay rate, CCM music. Mm-hmm. Very Christian music doesn't pay as much as you would think it does. Right. And so I wanted to move to the next level. So I started saying no to gigs. And in 2014, to supplement income, I had a friend that had a landscaping company, and I'd go landscape 3 or 4 days a week. And if I had a session come up, I would take a day off before the session, so my hands weren't ruined from landscaping and doing manual labor. And I was doing that. I was painting. I was doing all kinds of things. So I'll say this, during that radio silence, man, build up community around you. You need to make sure you're in community with people, and you need friends that are going to help you, no matter what vocation you're in, that will help encourage you. So you need to be around people that are encouraging.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because at some point you're going to need to encourage them and return the favor.
Yeah, that's good.
So be around encouraging people and encouraging, because in my town, in Nashville, it's hard to make friends, because friends, it's more of a friendship of like, what can you get me situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Rather than I actually like you as a person and I want to be your friend. So I've got a handful of really close friends, and then the rest kind of turn into, what can you do for me situation.
Yeah. That's very interesting, and I would like to point out that success can be like almost like a drug, because you get highs off of it, but people struggle when I get a little bit of success, but then I don't have it at the moment, and then it's almost like depression sets in.
Oh, absolutely. And it's almost like I look back at Robin Williams' situation where he said, he was surrounded by people but felt like the loneliest person. That can happen on a tour. That can happen, being in Nashville, because you are around people, but you do feel lonely at times. And so that's why I say it's crucial to build strong friendships, that aren't derived off of work. And of course you do still work with your friends sometimes, but really create meaningful friendships with people, because you know what? Careers come and go. I tell this to my kids at Camp Electric. I just say, no job is stable, whether you're in the corporate world or you're in my world. And this is all temporary. Mm-hmm. So what do we have when the job is gone? Well, I hope you have a good relationship with people. Yeah. So that's why it's important to be kind to everyone that you meet and never come off as a douchebag.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. And so, here's the question. Obviously, it can happen where someone can have a career doing what you're doing. Yeah. What do you feel like there's a point where somebody ages out and needs to do something else?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And the trick to that, and I've got a few friends that are in that market now, that are getting into their mid 40s and 50s, and that are still touring with very, very recognizable mainstream artists and some Christian artists. And some of them are trying to figure out, what do I do next? Or what's next? And so this is what I'm doing right now. I don't want to be in their position. I'm 35 right now. I don't want to be 50 trying to figure out my life again.
Yeah.
So I'll say this to any musician that's wanting to do music for a living, also find something outside of it, outside of music, so you don't get trapped in this world. I hate saying it like that. I hate saying it like it's being trapped in a prison, but you can be pigeonholed in this business.
That's good. Yeah.
So that's why I'm involved. Like, I'm interested in business, and so I have my hands in different business opportunities outside of music. And that's one way I help support my family, is by having a lot of plates spinning. I'm not just relying on my one gig, you know, and I'm not relying on multiple gigs, you know, because you can do that. If you're playing with everyone under the sun, you're going to burn yourself out.
Yeah.
So it's good to be diverse in what you're doing for a living.
Yeah, that's so good. It's finding your identity, and that none of us really. I mean, even if we play guitar and we enjoy it, our identity is not just being a guitar player or a musician. We got to find out what our identity is.
Absolutely. And I see guys doing it. They'll be like, you know, they'll put their Instagram name like such and such guitar, or guitar this, and just like, and I changed my Instagram handle during the 2014. It used to be like Bagby Music, you know, and I changed it in 2014 because when I was landscaping and I was in that rough spot where I felt like it was radio silent, I'm taking a chance to move into this next level, and I'm turning down opportunities because it didn't make sense money-wise, even though I was making a little less probably doing the landscaping. But I knew I needed to make that sacrifice. So, but then I was heavily, you know, I was home more. That's another thing. I miss a lot of church because I'm traveling so much, and so I was able to really dig into church that whole year, and I started looking at my identity. Is my identity in my vocation and my work? Because whenever you meet someone, it's always like, "Hey, what's your name? Cool. Oh, so what do you do?"
Yeah.
Nobody ever says, "Hey, what's your name?" Well, who are you? Nobody ever asks who. They just ask what.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think it's important that we start asking each other, "Who are you?"
Yeah, that's good. That's real good.
Yeah. And so I started finding my identity in myself as a child of God. I'm a father. I'm a husband. And honestly, careers come and go. And I've seen it. I've seen it for artists. I've seen it for players. So I stopped putting my identity in what I do for a living.
Yeah, that's real good, and that's a lesson outside of the gear world or whatever that we could carry with us.
Yep.
One last thing. I know that my listeners are going to be curious about this, but give me just a quick rig rundown of what your tools are.
Sure. So, man, I keep it simple. This is another thing that I would say if anybody's going out on the road, you know, because, man, you see all these massive pedal boards and the Gear Talk forums and things like that, but it's like, and I know guys will argue the fact and say that they, you know, they have so many pedals on their board to cover, you know, sometimes we're covering elevation or song. And honestly, this is my personal opinion. I know I might get reamed for it for some listeners, but I think all the tones and sounds have been discovered for the most part. And I think you can kind of create a basis around that. So my motto is to keep it simple. And so whatever pedals I use on my board is what I use for the gig. And or I find a tool that just makes things easier. I know some guys are using helixes, which are fantastic, you know, for that, or Kempers, or, you know, and, you know, you don't have to have the Strymon timelines. You don't have to keep up with the Joneses on the praise and worship forums, you know, to make great art and great music and to replicate those sounds. I think you can, if you use what you have, you'll stand out among other people, other players.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's just kind of funny because, like, even in my world, Clint, the guitar tech for Toby, came over to me, he saw my board. He's like, "So you're only using like 7 pedals and you're playing your whole set, and our utility player plays guitar on 2 songs, but he's got over a dozen pedals on his board. He's like, I don't get it. I said, yeah. I said, I know why he's got all that. I said, he has it because that's how he creates. And he feels like he needs that to create. And for me, as from my standpoint as a player, as I need what I use to just work for the job. And so for me, so I'm sitting in a hotel lobby and I got a vacuum cleaner going on. So sorry about the background
not
noise.
A problem.
I'm in Denver, Colorado today on an off day. And so for me, like for my rig, I'm using a pedal train pedal board I've had since 2005, literally. Same size. Wow. So I have not changed board sizes. The reason why I use a PT2 is because when I was playing bars, those giant pedal train pros would not fit on the stages in the bar. And so I started with the mentality even long ago, back in like 05, 06, to just use what I need for my job to get the job done. And so I'm using a PT2 size board. I plug into this American Loopers not pedal, but distributor box, basically. And I go into a JHS mini foot fuzz because I've got 3 or 4 fuzz pedals at home, and this was the smallest. So, and it sounds good, so I just threw it on there. And then I go into a RMC 10, which is a real McCoy wah. Okay. I've gone through Crybabies over the years and box wahs, and they all just break down on me. And then for Mandisa's gig, I actually bought this pedal for it. I don't buy gear very often. And that's another thing that these guys need to know in the praise and worship communities is that the pros aren't buying gear or trading gear as much as they are. We, like I said, we look at it as tools, and if it's not broken, well, why do we need to fix it? Right. And so I blew through a couple. I have a couple broken Crybabies at home, and the one I had was a 95 Q, and it was just the sweep was terrible. And for this gig, I needed a really good tool, and so I went ahead and did some research and found the best wah pedal, and man, I love it. So that company focuses on wah pedals. That's what they build. And the guy, Jeffrey Keith, is a very kind guy, and he's not on social media. His website looks like it's from the 90s. But it just shows you he's successful at he's building a fantastic product that he doesn't need all the marketing behind what he does. And so I'm thankful. So he gave me like a small artist discount, not very much. I still paid over a couple $100 for the wah pedal, but it was worth it. So I run from that. And then last year I ended up finally picking up one of my favorite pedals because I needed a quieter situation, but I picked up a True Tone Route 66, which used to be Visual Sound. I've been friends with Bob Weil since he lives literally the shop is a block away from my house, and so I just I've been friends with him through church and whatnot over the years, and so I finally bought. He gave me a nice artist discount, and I picked up one of their Route 66 pedals, and so I use the compression side of that mostly because it has a noise gate on it, and it's super quiet, and it really does help a lot because I do run real amp drive on my amp, so it helps keep that quiet. And then I'll use the light drive side of it. It's just one of my favorite sounding overdrive pedals too as well. And then I run into a Third Power Roosevelt pedal, which I will use. I don't use it on this set or much at all unless my amp goes down, which we'll get to. So basically, it will be my backup main drive in case my amp ever goes down and I have to plug through my backup amp because it sounds like an amp. It's a fantastic pedal. I just don't use it because I've got real amp drive. So yeah, I love it. And then I go into a Hog 2, which I only use one setting on it right now. It's because I didn't want to have a volume pedal on my board, and I just used a swell feature that I threw in. So I'll throw some delays on, and then the swell button to where I don't even have to do my board to to do volume swell
Oh,
stuff.
that's cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like a slow volume situation. And then I think it routes out to that back to that American Loopers box, and then to the out of the amp, and then I use my effects loop on my amp. So I go into that looper pedal again, and then it goes to just a TC Electronics mini polytuner or polytune, just because it's small. I've got lots of tuners, and the last one I had on there was a Needle Boss TU something tuner. I had a needle, and I liked it because during the festivals when it was sunny outside, you could see if things were in tune. But I needed something small, so that thing finally broke, and it gave me an excuse to buy a tuner. So yeah, so typically when something breaks, I'll buy something new.
There you go.
So and so I went ahead. So I got that, and then I go into a Line 6 M9 that I bought originally in 2013. No mod have been done. I didn't do the JV H3 mod or anything like that, which I am tempted to do because I've just been hearing how great it is for durability reasons. And but it's been holding up, and so I actually purchased that when I was touring with the artist Plum.
Okay.
And she had a lot of weird sounds on her album, and and if I went to Guitar Center to buy the pedals to replicate those sounds, it would have cost a fortune.
Yeah.
So I just spent, I think it was like $300. I think it was my discount at the Guitar Center. So I have a pro account with Guitar Center, so I don't have to pay full price. It's basically employee pricing.
Oh, awesome.
So it's pretty awesome. So wherever I'm at in the country, I can call my rep if I'm in a bind. That's where Guitar Center is great for me, is that if I'm in a bind, I can just call my rep and he can send a quote over to whatever Guitar Center I'm near, and then I can pick up the product and not have to pay full retail, which is awesome. It's a blessing. So I run out of the M9 back. So literally the tuner is just like a kill switch, and that's why I throw it in the effects loop. And and then there's like a little foot switch to control my amp. I'm running a third power amplification CSR 40, which it's a 2-channel situation amp, and it's got built-in spring reverb, real spring reverb. So it's been awesome to use real reverb because I don't use a lot of effects on this gig. Like I use some flatback delay and some light delay stuff, and occasionally a couple of long, heavier delays for the worship stuff. But like that's really there's not a lot effect-wise I'm using. And so I used to use the reverbs on the M9, but now since I've got a real reverb tank in that amp, I've just been using that, and that's switchable on and off. The amp itself is ridiculous. Like my clean channel is very similar. I can get to a Fender Bassman kind of clean to if you turn the mid knob in, if you use the mid knob, if you take it all out, you've got basically a Bassman sound. If you add the mids in, you can get kind of like that Fender Twin sound.
Okay.
Stays really clean, and then you can gain it up if you want to gain up the clean channel to where it pushes slightly. But I keep it clean because clean is important on this gig, not for chimey worship stuff necessarily, but more for the funk. Style of this stuff that I got to do. So a clean amp is very important for me, and so that's why I have this amp. And then the dirty channel, like it's like a 3-position situation where I can get the sounds of a JTM 45, like a Marshall JTM 45, or and then the next sound, the dip switch, and the next sound is like a 68 plexi, and then the last one is his take on the Citizen Gain amp, which is just a high gain amp. You can compare it to like a Friedman or things like that. So this amp can do high gain, it can do classic gain, so it's an extremely versatile amp. I use a lot for recording studio situations as well. So, but it's been fantastic, and I switched over to third power a couple years ago when I was with Audio Adrenaline, where the owner of the company just invited me to come to the shop. It's in East Nashville.
Okay.
And at the time I was using a Bogner Ecstasy, which is a 3-channel amp that can do the high gain and low gain thing. And then and then like an Orange 412 cabinet had an endorsement with Orange at one point. And so I brought that over, and he didn't even he wasn't there to knock the brand or say my amp is better. He said, I want you to hear the difference between the amps, but also he's like, I wanted you to bring your rig because I want to learn what you like about your amp, because I want to be able to offer that to you in my amp builds. Yeah. And so it was really cool, It wasn't like, snooting your nose at the other amp kind of situation. It was more of a learning process, which I really respect. And so that's kind of like the reason why he even developed the CSR 40. I was one of the people he was working on that for, because he just didn't have anything like that. And so it took a couple of years of development. So now I finally have it. So
that's awesome. So
yeah,
that's good though to have those kind of options in your amp, because it kind of gives you everything you need right in one place.
Absolutely. So I've got all my options right there in the amp, or I have enough pedals, to be able to do what I need to do. Literally, the only drive I use is, the Route 66 pedal. And then if my amp ever goes down, which it has not gone down. When it was getting built, I was using my soft tack on a tour, and I was using that pedal that they built, the Third Power Roosevelt, as my main drive, because it acted so much like an amp. And so I'm like, this is fantastic. And so now, if that Third Power ever goes down, I have my soft tech with me on this tour in this double head case situation, and I've got a cable running all the way to it already, so it'll be a quick changeover if it happens. But yeah, I mean, I'm only using the Route 66 drive for a couple songs, but most of my drive is straight up Third Power amp. And my favorite selection is still the 68 Flexi. So that's my favorite drive sound.
Cool deal. What are you doing guitar wise?
So guitar wise, I'm using 2 companies on this tour. I have the acoustic guitars. So sometimes we have to play acoustic, and that's not necessarily an acoustic set. It's like it's full band, and she wants some acoustic finger picking stuff here and there. And so I'll use Gopher Wood guitars for that. I've been working with that company since last fall, and they're relatively new. They came out in 2013. They're all built in China, and I was very skeptical when I got it in the mail from the rep. I was like, oh, great. And man, honestly, it sounded really good once I tuned it up out of the box. But the real test is when you got to bring it to rehearsal sound check. And so I brought it, and the front of house engineer came over to me. He's like, I just wanted to see what that was because it sounds so good.
Mm-hmm.
So it sounded great plugged in. And for me, it needs to sound great plugged in or mic'd up. So it's been really good. So I've got a couple Gopher Wood acoustics that I'll use from time to time. But on this tour, I'm just concentrating on electric for the set. And I just got a new Sublime Chieftain Deluxe that just came in. They just released those in December. And so I got one of those in. And Tommy, the product developer over there, he put in a different pickup in the bridge for me because he knows what I like, because we've worked together. I think it's my 4th guitar from them, and so he knows what I'm into as far as the sound. So he threw in a different pickup that no one else has in that model, and it sounds fantastic. So I'll use that for the opening couple songs, and then I go to some Bluesman vintage guitars. I'm not sure if you've heard of that company.
Heard of those, yes.
Yeah, they're literally a block away from me. They're actually in the same warehouse working area as True Tone, and so
okay,
they're neighbors basically. And I met John Scott, the owner, probably in 2010. I went to an Amp Expo. I had literally just bought like a G&L Telly, or traded for it actually. I traded a 7-string, which that's a fun story. trade a 7-string Ibanez for this nice GML, and I loved it. And then I went and played on one of John's guitars probably like a week later, and I was like, dang, I need to go sell my guitar so I could get one of John's, because it felt fantastic. It felt broken in. It felt, like someone had given it some love over the years. And so I started using Bluesman vintage guitars when I started with Audio Adrenaline, because I needed a good telly to do like Big House and some of the old Audio A classics like Ocean Floor and all those songs. And so I picked that up, and then eventually picked up another guitar from him, which is so that's a coupe. And then I've got what they call I believe a Fleetwood guitar, which is basically a Jazzmaster type build. So that's a really cool guitar, and I think I'm using it only on one song for this tour, and I keep it in the middle position with the two P90s going, because for some reason that's like the magic spot for that guitar. I kind of feel like every guitar has that one, if it's lucky, two magic spots, but usually it's one magic spot that the guitar really speaks. Like I said earlier, get the tools that you need that are going to do the job correctly. So,
yeah. Well, I was looking up those guitars, and I mean, they're not that out of reach.
No, and for affordability, they're not bad. They really aren't. They're still around the $2,000 to $2,600 range, and they're built very well. And then so I've got those two Bluesmans, and then I've got a Sublime Millennia Standard, which they don't make anymore. And that's kind of like how I stumbled on the Sublime company. I was filling in on a 4-week tour for my buddy Jeremy from 7 Day Slumber, and he had just replaced all the Paul Reed Smith guitars, his touring Paul Reed Smith, with his company. And so I flew out to the gig. He's like, just tell me what you think, because I literally went out there with ears. And I think I brought a delay pedal, like a Boss DD20, which he uses, but I didn't know how he did all of his presets, so I just brought that for me. And he uses like a Swan Nitro, and he's now moved on to Kemper, which is funny for a hard rock band. It's working. And so, but I fell in love with these guitars, and I played as Paul Reed Smith on the gig, and I just, for some reason, I didn't fall in love with the Paul Reed Smiths, and it could have been the way he had them set up as well, because that's not fair, because that company is a fantastic company. Paul Reed Smith makes some of the best guitars I've ever seen and played on, but it might have just been the way he had them set up. But he, so I've done the gig with those, and then he got these Sublimes out. I just pick one up and I start playing them. And I brought my Duesenberg at the time out too, just in case, I didn't like his guitars. And man, I fell in love with the Sublime Millennia models. And so I ended up getting I told Jeremy, I'm like, I need to get one of these. I need to call the owner. How do I get one? And so talked to Tommy at the time, and this is like a few years, a couple years ago, probably 2014 or so. And like, yeah, I'm doing these Chinese dates with an American artist, and I need something that's not super expensive that I can bring over, and I don't have to worry if it gets mangled. Like I said earlier, don't get emotionally attached to your tools.
Right.
And so, yeah, these guitars are not very expensive. Those guitars were like around the $400 to $500 range, which is, it's so funny because Tim was a guitar player from TobyMac, was listening to me playing Overcomer, the last song of our set, and he goes, man, that guitar screams. Like, he's like, I love that. He's like, man, like, how much? I say, it's like a $500 guitar. He's like, what? Because he's got like 30 Paul Reed Smiths.
Yeah.
They, sent him over the years. He was kind of mind blown by that. So funny. But yeah, so I'm just using those 4 guitars, just a Chieftain hollow body, and then the 2 Bluesman guitars, and then back to the Millennia Standard, which is kind of like a Les Paul style guitar.
Okay.
So yeah, that's what I'm using. So I think for any guitar player, tool wise, it's good to have. Which I'm working on this. I don't even have a Strat anymore. The last Strat I owned, I ended up selling to Thomas Rhett.
Okay.
Yeah, I had to pay rent one month. So I sold my college guitar that I bought in college, and he just came over and bought it. So
Yeah.
all this stuff.
Well,
So
cool. Well, I enjoyed, kind of getting your rig run down there, and I know this is going to be something that our listeners are going to enjoy and find a lot of value from as well.
yeah, no, I appreciate you interviewing me for this, and I'm glad we finally were able to make it happen. I'm sorry it's been kind of crazy these last month or two to try to connect on getting this going, but
Oh,
I'm very very thankful for what you do in the community, in the music community yourself. So appreciate you.
well, thank you for coming on, and yeah, it's I appreciate it so much.
Awesome. Well, awesome. Well, Clifton, you make it a great day, and man, listeners that are out there listening to this, I just want to encourage you to dream big, and don't just dream, like implement your dreams, because if you don't do that, your dreams probably won't come true. And the last thing I'll say, and I say this to every player, that you can practice and meet the right people in the industry if you want to do what I do and do what you think is all the right thing. But honestly, until God opens up opportunity, it won't happen.
Hmm.
So just know that.
That's good. That's good. Well,
So,
thank y'all for listeners for joining in, and if you wouldn't mind, just hit subscribe if you like what you hear, and you can find us on Facebook, and we've
yep,
got a group there going as well, and
yep,
so thank you,
yeah.
Brandon.
Thank you. And if the listeners want to find me, I'm on social media. Just look up. Like I said, it's not like Bagby Music or anything like that dealing with music. Just look up Brandon J Bagby. That's my handle for Twitter and Instagram. I don't use Twitter that much. If you want to find me on Facebook, I think it's still stuck at Brandon Bagby Music. Sorry, guys.
Awesome.
So yeah, and if you have any, if the listeners have questions, I mean, people inbox me pretty often on Facebook if you have a question, or you can DM me on Instagram, and or if you're coming to town and you want to grab a coffee, if I'm available, I'll sit down with you. I'm not untouchable or unreachable. So
Sweet.
yeah,
Well, thank you again, Brandon.
yeah, no problem,
All
no
right.
problem at all. Thanks so much.
Thank you.